My name is Lalo Alcaraz. I'm a cartoonist and writer. And back in the early 90s, I had just gotten out of UC Berkeley Graduate School for Architecture, and I moved to LA, and I was drawing comics and making a satirical magazine called Pocho Magazine. I grew up in San Diego on the border, and my parents are Mexican immigrants, and so I grew up. When I was a teenager, I started to hear about the anti-immigrant activists that lived on the border and hated Mexican immigrants. This is like years before Prop 187 happened, and these are kind of the same people that started Prop 187. So I was acquainted with this mindset already because of the light up the border people that, they would drive up to the border with their cars and light it up as undocumented people were crossing, trying to get across the border, or also the Minutemen, all these like really, kind of fake militia people that tried to intimidate Mexicans, or they really hated Mexican immigrants. And so when I was in LA around that time, hearing about this and hearing about people from Orange County had started this, I thought, oh yeah, this is no surprise to me, but it was kind of interesting that they took it to a state level, because before it seemed to me like very southern thing, Southern California, south, close to the border thing, and the attitudes of Orange County. But here it was all across the state now, and it was like, wow, this is not a good direction. Even when I was in college at San Diego State, in San Diego, I was the editorial cartoonist for the school paper, and I found old cartoons of mine that look like stuff that I'm drawing now, about the issues anyway, about immigration, violence on the border, and racist attitudes. And so I didn't like, Prop 187 didn't make me start doing new things. I had already been doing them, but I kind of wasn't prepared for the level of hatred that it made bubble up, So I think I started, doing more the immigration cartoons than usual. Eventually, I did one editorial cartoon a week for the LA Weekly at around that time, starting in '92. So, that's the period right before kind of around the time of 187 happening. I was drawing Pete Wilson once a week almost in my cartoons, So I drew Pete Wilson a lot. So there's a couple that are standouts. Of course, I drew him as Hitler. Of course, I drew him as probably the chupacabra, and probably did all these things in as many demeaning ways that I could. A border patrol agent, I drew him as as an old, as like the church lady kind of, like a viejita with binoculars at the border, and then I called him anti-immigration, right? So I had lots of variations of Pete Wilson. Even I got sick of drawing Pete Wilson, believe me. But there was one where I had the punchline. It was like, it showed a vacuum cleaner. It says like chupa carpet, and then it has what's the other one? I had the chupacabras, and then the last panel was Pete Wilson, and it said chupa cabron. And basically suck it, jerk. And so that was a super popular one too. But I had a lot of fun. The other one I'm thinking of is because I grew up in San Diego. I grew up with the immigrant crossing sign, the family sign, and so I think I might have drawn one of the very first, if not the first, political cartoon using the sign in it, and it didn't have Pete Wilson or anything, but it was from that era, and it showed it says caution, and it shows a family running of undocumented people running, and then behind it is it says caution politicians, and the second half of the sign is like a big politician with a stick chasing them. So those were pretty iconic images that I did back then. So for me, drawing cartoons about what the community was going through, for me, it's two things always. It's for me to try to express what people in the community might be feeling, and to kind of put it out there to show that it's valid. You know, our feelings of fear and paranoia that we were feeling after, you know, getting attacked so much. And secondly, I wanted, you know, people in the community, and not just the Latino community, but the whole community too, to if they were on, you know, on the receiving end of these things, or if they sympathized, then, you know, they should know what we're thinking, and they should also feel like I'm not crazy for thinking these things, you know. And that's my concept of drawing cartoons to this day. But yeah, back then it was, I got a hate letter, not a hate letter, I got a negative letter from a famous author, actually, in the San Francisco Bay Guardian. He's a famous author now, and my comic came out there, and he was like, "Oi, what? Pete Wilson again in your cartoons? Wow, how, you know, interesting. Week after week, Pete Wilson, you know." And I was floored. I was like, okay, why is this, you know, really smart white liberal guy that's an editor at this paper, like, not getting what we're going through, you know? And he would be embarrassed if I pointed that out today, but I'm not going to point him out. But yeah, it was kind of a view into what we're feeling. Chicano artists have like an ability to, and it comes from, I think, being Mexican and also Latin American, of being able to create these like really bold images, and that's always my goal, to create bold images that hit you over the head and communicate instantly, you know, what I'm thinking. And so during this time, period of people waking up and feeling under attack, I mean, and me finally having like a little platform in the LA Weekly, you know, I was super excited anytime people would share my cartoons. You know, there wasn't really an internet back then, so people would Xerox my cartoons and blow them up at, you know, the copy shops, and hold them up in rallies and things, and they would pass them around. And if people asked me if they could use the image for a flyer, I would say, of course, you know, go ahead. And so to me, I mean, that was like my internet, my social media is getting the people in the movement to share the images, you know, and it only encouraged me to do more. I think the biggest image, well, two things. People used to say that I created the nickname for Pete Wilson, which was Pito Wilson, which I did not. This is probably Juan Jose Gutierrez or somebody in these groups did, or some guy on the radio or something. But secondly, I did draw Pete Wilson a lot, and I saw it as a way to, you know, punch back at Pete Wilson. Also, the biggest image that I had was Migra Mouse, which was when back then the Walt Disney Company had donated money to Pete Wilson's re-election campaign. This very campaign about using Prop 187, and but they had also donated to his opponent, which is what big corporations do. They just hedge their bets. And so, but during this time, the Disney Company had started to market their movies to the Latino community, and they to the Spanish-speaking community. So I thought it was pretty ironic of them to support this anti-immigrant thing, clearly, and then give money, to a guy, and then, try to have those people as consumers. So I drew Mickey Mouse as a Border Patrol agent, pointing you out to Mexico, and that became a super huge image in a lot of rallies and things, and people, again, made copies and held them up, and somebody even made me a big wooden Migra mouse that I still have, which I'm going to donate to the Smithsonian because it's pretty dope. It's beautiful. So I think it's all political messaging, for me. I mean, it's getting that point across instantly, and empowering people who might not be able to articulate some of these points and can look at an image and go like, that's what I feel, and then they can copy it and they can hold it up at a rally and show the world, what we think, Back then, I had met my friend Esteban Zul. He and I had created Pocho magazine, and it was a handmade zine that we'd make photocopies, and it was a humor magazine that we did, satire. And so Pete Wilson's actually on the cover of one of the, he's the cover boy for one of them, possibly issue 2. Anyway, so Esteban and I were driving around one day, and I was like physically sick to my stomach. We were talking about Prop 187, and we couldn't believe all the hatred that was being spewed every day. I can remember like having a big knot in my stomach and thinking like, what could we do to fight this? Because the cartoons weren't really doing it, and I thought, what would be a fun way to attack Wilson? And I had read in the news that Wilson had a fake, he had a fake Latino support group called Latinos for Wilson, right? And it turns out we ended up meeting some of these guys, but I thought, these guys are they're probably Cuban American business guys, and they're really not into politics, but they'll do anything for the Republicans, right? And I thought, we should start our own group that's really militant, that is we're so pro Wilson, we'd be so anti-immigrant that we would be willing to deport ourselves to support Prop 187. And so we called it Hispanics for Wilson. And so back then, there really wasn't the internet, but I think you could get on AOL, right? I think, and so we would write phony press releases about how we're willing to deport ourselves, and how we called for the banning of Mexican food as biological weapons. We called for the banning of the music of Linda Ronstadt. She had just come out with a Spanish album, and she was attracting too many Mexicans to the U.S. with their music. And just a bunch of, and we called for the deportation of all immigrants, regardless of country, all to Mexico, right? And so, and we set up, we just put my P.O. box up there, and I think we had a voicemail number, and we started faxing it all over the place to media everywhere, faxing, emailing, whatever you could do. And people started like believing it existed, right? But one day, and very early on, we got a voicemail back from a producer at Telemundo for the Sevsek show. And Pedro Sevsek was a producer for the show Cristina, the very scandalous show. And he was like a journalist, and he had his own, just got his own talk show. So the letter said, we would like to invite you to come on our show to discuss Proposition 187, and come out to, I think it was out in, it wasn't Riverside, but it was out there pretty far out east, to their studio, and they were going to do the first live satellite hookup for their show between L.A. and Miami, right? So they invited us to the L.A. studio out there in the desert somewhere. But we looked at that and we said, oh my God, they believe this. And I told my friend Esteban, I go, what are we going to do? He goes, what do you mean, what are we going to do? We're going to dress up, we're going to go, we're Hispanics for Wilson. And so I was like, all right. And they did get the clue from all the ridiculous points that we were making, because we were just trying to spoof these Latinos for Wilson who, we were saying that they weren't militant enough. And then my name as the head of the group was Daniel Deportado. I mean, the clue is in the name, right? And so we said, all right. So we got another friend. His name is Lalo Medina. And so that there could be three of us, so we would pretend to be a big group. And then we gave them made-up names, and then I said the one was my bodyguard, one was my assistant, and we went to that show. And I was dressed like, I had like my hair like poofed out and combed over to the side. I had big narc sunglasses, like I was a 1970s narc from a bad movie. And then I wore a shabby coat and a big wide tie, everything from the Segunda. And then so we went, and the audience was filled with high school students and their parents mostly, and some activists. The high school students had just gotten expelled or suspended for walking out in protest of 187. And they're from out there, I think from Riverside or something. And there was a lot of anger and people yelling at us in the studio audience. And señoras, like these old ladies were like, so they would interview us. But before they interviewed us, the satellite link up in Miami had these actual Latinos for Wilson guys. These like three, I'm not lying, I'm not trying to be rude, 3 Cuban attorneys. And they were over there supporting the anti-Mexican immigrant thing. And then also there were a bunch of activists from UCLA, like professors and stuff, guys that we knew, right? And some professors, the names escape me right now, but so they would cut from studio to studio, and then when the attorneys, the Latinos for Wilson would talk, then they cut back. They would argue amongst themselves. They would come back to us, and then Juan Jose Gutierrez was in our audience, who was a very vocal immigration activist. Who his nickname is Juan Jose Palabra because he's such a good talker, and so he would attack them, and he would make fun of their appearance and weight, and then I was like, all right, this is barely. But he was just a few feet away from us. He called us out right away, and he goes, "No tenemos que estar aquí con esos aventureros." He was calling us out, saying we were mercenaries, we were phonies, we were getting paid to do this, whatever. And then, so then I was like, whatever, ignoring him. And then they came to us, and I would be like, we have a list of demands, and this is all in Spanish. We call for the banning of Mexican food as a biological weapon. It's bad for your health, too. Banning of all the banda music and the music of Linda Ronstadt. It's attracting too many Mexicans. The crowd is going crazy, going like, what? And then I said, we are so for Pete Wilson and this anti-immigration Proposition 187 that we're going to deport ourselves to Mexico to show our support. And the whole place erupted, and the señoras going, pues váyanse. So this went back and forth, and then I insulted the guy in Miami. I think I called him Jorge de Queso. His name was like Jorge Quesada or something. So the show was over. We gave our demands, or then we said what we were going to do, deport ourselves, and then that was it. The show was over, but I know like the guys that we knew from UCLA were kind of looking at it through the monitor, going like, "Man, that guy looks familiar," and so the broadcast ended, and then the producers came and they said, "You know what? I think we need to walk you guys to the parking lot to your car because these people want to kill you right now." So they were all worked up, and they were all staring at us, and they walked us out. I thought, so then we go out to the car. They didn't let anybody else out. They took us to the car. My friend's car has a No on 187 bumper sticker on the back of it, but they didn't see it. So we get in the car, and we're there laughing. We cannot believe this just happened. And then here comes the producer running out. And I'm like, oh no, man, they're going to cut us from this whole thing. And she came over and she was like, you guys forgot to sign your release. We're like, woo, all right. So we signed a release. And then that was it. And so then that was filmed about 3 weeks before the election of the vote on 187. Our effort was futile. Prop 187 won hugely, and then they aired though that our show the Friday before the election. So we're probably responsible for the passing. No, it was in Spanish, so these people weren't going to vote for it. But yeah, it was so funny. And so then Telemundo never found out until about I think maybe a month later. We got a call from Telemundo from some producer that said, we're looking for an anti-immigrant person to come on a show. But I'm like, I could hear a bunch of people like sitting around like laughing, and I think they were, they didn't want to say like, I know what you did. I don't think they were going to admit it, but they were teasing me and saying like, they're going to fly me to Miami for some show. But that never happened. I think they were just like calling back to kind of let us know that they kind of found out. But I think that because of this political hoax I did, Hispanics for Wilson, he did steal one of our main platform for Hispanics for Wilson and used it as his political platform, which was self-deportation. We shot another video. We shot video of Hispanics for Wilson. We did like a mini mockumentary about the group where we invent the Deporto Ray, and we shoot any brown person with the ray, and they turn into a Mexican wearing a sombrero and sarape and a big mustache, and then they march back to the border, and then they march back to Mexico, and then eventually the border of Mexico becomes so full the border explodes and it goes all the way up to Canada. So like, but we also we shot some footage down in Chicano Park in San Diego, and I almost got stabbed by a guy who threatened me with a buck knife. He was going to stab me, but he said he was going to cut off my tie because I had an American flag tie. And we went down there, and we had like 5 people just for safety. But yeah, I almost got like jacked by by the Brown Berets. I also had a comedy group called Chicano Secret Service, and we would perform with Culture Clash and Teatro Campesino, and I started it in Berkeley. And so we would also do bits about Pete Wilson or whatever, but we started touring a lot and doing lots of shows all over the country. But we did these 2 shows with one of the very first Rock en Español tours that came to the U.S. It was called Revolución, and it was '94. And we did a show in San Diego, and we did a show at Universal Studios at the Universal Amphitheater. It's not there anymore. But we did a skit ourselves. Some of the bands were political, not really, but we have other friends that were and had lots of political bands that were doing lots of anti-Pete Wilson and 187 stuff too. But anyways, real quick, we did a Pete Wilson skit on stage, and we almost got killed with all the money that all the coins that all the Mexicanos are throwing at us. We're boom, boom. Dangerous. It was dangerous. So dumb. But yeah, so in the scene, all our friends like Ozo Motley before they were Ozo Motley, you know, and all different bands and you know, Rage Against the Machine, Zach de la Rocha. We were all hanging out and doing stuff together and performing at his studio, and yeah, everybody was, you know, really activated, I think, by this. Yeah, I spent most of Big Top Locos in a booth selling posters and stuff. And I was next to Eazy-E from NWA, I guess. They told me, I don't remember. But yeah, that was an amazing event. But I was more like working the event than just attending. That's the curse of my life. I'm always backstage.